When your enemies realized they couldn't touch your success, they tried to stain your name. That's how it always begins, not with courage, but with whispers. Someone decided your calm was too threatening, your peace too expensive. So they sent an investigator to find out who you really are. They thought they'd finally expose something, but what they didn't expect was that the truth would embarrass them. Because every single person who knew you didn't feed their gossip, they buried it. The moment the questions started, the rumors died. That's what happens when lies collide with receipts of integrity. When you live right, even investigations turn into testimonies. The same people they tried to use against you ended up defending you. The same stories they twisted snapped right back into place. Facts don't bow to jealousy, and your truth didn't flinch under the flashlight. They thought they'd catch you slipping, but they only caught themselves in the mirror. You can almost hear their frustration now, can't you? The sound of disappointment from people who prayed for your downfall and got your upgrade instead. Chosen one, take a second. If this message already feels like it's telling your story, press the like button and subscribe right now. That's your way of sending energy back to this mission, of letting the universe know you stand strong with those who rise clean in a world that loves dirt. Now let's go deeper, because what happened here wasn't random, it was exposure season. They thought your silence meant weakness, but silence is how the universe builds suspense before the reveal. You've been walking through rooms lately where people's smiles don't match their eyes. They talk about you with that half-curious, half-threatened tone. You can feel when you leave a space that conversations begin the moment you're gone. That's because your energy lingers. You leave proof of your power without saying a word. And then, when that investigator, that so-called professional, showed up asking questions, your reputation did the talking. They expected chaos and found composure. They expected drama and met discipline. One co-worker said they always stay calm under pressure. A friend added, if anything, they've helped more people than they'll ever admit. Imagine the silence in the room when the report came back clean. It wasn't just clean, it was glowing. They didn't just find no dirt, they found gold. This is where envy burns, because those who hate you wanted proof that you're fake. Instead, they got confirmation that you're realer than they ever were. Their jealousy isn't just emotional anymore, it's physical. You can see it in the way they avoid your eyes, how they go quiet when your name comes up. You've become their uncomfortable truth, the walking reminder that good still wins, and authenticity still survives the smear. You've got to understand, these people don't hate you for what you did. They hate you for what you didn't do. You didn't break. You didn't give them chaos. You didn't hand them your peace to feed their rumor mill. And when the truth came out, it didn't just clear your name, it stamped your legacy. They thought they were exposing you. The universe exposed them. It's wild how predictable betrayal becomes when you start living on a higher level. The same patterns repeat: the smear campaign, the silent observers, the fake concern. But what's different now is you've seen this movie before. You already know how it ends. The truth always comes back wearing your face. The people who tried to study you just ended up becoming your unpaid promoters. And let's not forget, this isn't new. Even in the past, when people tried to destroy legends, they accidentally made them unforgettable. Think about it. They mocked innovators, and now those names sit in history books. They doubted those who walked with quiet purpose, and now they quote their words like scripture. You, chosen one, are in that same lineage of misunderstood greatness. You're not being investigated, you're being documented. So here's the real revelation. They didn't realize the universe was taking notes too. Every lie they spoke turned into proof of your patience. Every doubt they spread became data in your favor. You weren't being tested. You were being recorded for your next victory. The universe saw the humiliation, the gossip, the fake rumors, and said, "Perfect. Now let's flip it." Because now your name doesn't just live in conversations, it lives in respect. People are starting to realize the calmest person in the room was the most dangerous all along. And for those who sent the investigator, let's just say they dug their own hole, thinking it was yours. They didn't just fail to destroy you, they ended up making you unforgettable. This is your vindication season, Chosen One. Every whisper they used to harm you has turned into proof of your truth. You didn't have to fight, explain, or defend yourself. Your reputation did it for you. And now, the same people who tried to bury your name can't stop saying it. And hey, Chosen One, yeah, you, the one whose name they tried to twist but couldn't touch. Are you ready to see how their little investigation backfired so perfectly it turned into your applause? Because what's coming next will make you realize the universe was defending your name the whole time. Drop 777 in the comments if you're ready to watch how every rumor flipped into your recognition. Don't scroll yet, stay till the end, because this story isn't just about survival, it's about elevation. If you've ever been lied on, doubted, or secretly envied, you're about to see how all of that worked in your favor. So lean in, Chosen One. This next part is where the truth finally speaks louder than their gossip. Number 1, they went digging for dirt and struck gold instead. You can't expose someone who has nothing to hide. You can only expose your obsession with seeing them fall. They thought they were about to uncover a scandal. They thought your name was a ticking bomb, waiting to go off once someone dug deep enough. So they sharpened their shovels and started the hunt. But the only explosion that happened was their own embarrassment when the dirt they searched for turned into proof of your purity. Because the truth is, there was never any dirt to begin with, just roots. Deep, solid, unshakable roots built on quiet discipline and character they could never fake. They sent an investigator to find your flaws, and he came back with evidence of your excellence. Let's be honest, they weren't curious about you. They were craving a downfall. They wanted your life to validate their jealousy. They whispered, "Nobody's that clean," hoping someone would finally say, "Yeah, I saw them slip once." But nobody did. Not because people were afraid to speak, but because your life didn't leave space for lies. You didn't fake integrity for the crowd. You practiced it when nobody was watching. That's why they couldn't destroy you. They were trying to break a mirror that only reflected their own ugliness. You've got to understand, Chosen One, the people who tried to expose you were never after truth. They were after control, because the moment your name started shining brighter, their insecurities started sweating. You became the story they couldn't stop stalking. They didn't want to understand you, they wanted to undo you. But how do you destroy someone who built their reputation on reality instead of performance? How do you attack a person whose worst flaw is that they stayed silent instead of petty? They came expecting chaos and found calm. They came searching for shame and found strength. That's why it stung, because your realness disarmed their rumors. Every question they asked about you returned with the same answer: solid, grounded, respected. The investigator couldn't fabricate scandal where truth already stood guard. Imagine that moment when they finally heard, actually, they've always been the same. Kind, focused, professional, never caused drama. The silence on the other end of that report must have been deafening. Their plan didn't just fail, it flipped. They handed you a background check, and you turned it into a background blessing. They wanted to expose a fraud, and instead revealed their own projection. Because Chosen One, envious people never hate you for your wrongs. They hate you for your rights. They hate that you didn't crumble when life tried to humiliate you. They hate that you don't panic when they start whispering. They hate that your peace is louder than their gossip. And the hardest thing for them to accept is that your name carries weight, not because you forced people to like you, but because you left marks of integrity everywhere you went. The truth hurts, doesn't it? They thought you were pretending, but while they were busy performing for attention, you were building credibility without even trying. You became proof that clean living and consistency are power moves in a world addicted to chaos. You don't have skeletons, you have standards, and that's why they can't stand you. You're the walking contradiction to everything they hoped was true about you. They told everyone you were fake. But real people keep confirming you're the truth. And maybe you've wondered, why me? Why can't they just leave me alone? Because people who lose control of their own story will always try to rewrite yours. You remind them of what they could have been if they didn't sell out their values. You remind them that success without character is hollow, and your glow exposes their emptiness. So they dig, they question, they probe, they gossip, but all that effort just polishes your name even brighter. That's what makes this so beautiful. Every attempt to bury you became a gardening session for your reputation. They planted rumors, but you grew proof. They watered lies, but you bloomed receipts. They didn't just fail to ruin you, they accidentally advertised your authenticity. And now, the same people who called you too good to be true are realizing you were just too true to be broken. Here's the cold fact. People can't destroy what they can't define. They've never understood your calm because they mistake quiet for weakness. They've never understood your boundaries because they mistake distance for guilt. But you're not hiding, you're healing. You're not silent because you're scared. You're silent because you already won. They wanted to see you unravel, but you're the one holding the thread. You walked through their trap without even stepping on it. Let's be real, this entire investigation was never about facts. It was about fantasy. They wanted your image to match the lies in their heads, but the investigator came back with data, not drama, and that broke them. Because now they can't even pretend they were right. You're living proof that the universe protects those who live in truth. And truth doesn't argue, it reveals. Remember this, your reputation didn't need defending, it just needed time. The longer they talked, the more their words exposed them, not you. Every false story they spun became a thread that unraveled their own credibility. You stood still while they destroyed their own peace trying to chase yours. That's poetic justice. So here's the real win. While they were waiting for your name to collapse, it climbed. You're being mentioned in rooms for all the right reasons, while their names fade behind closed doors. They wanted a scandal. They got a standing ovation. They were praying for dirt, and all they found was gold. And you, chosen one, remember this moment. Don't ever feel the need to defend your purity to people addicted to confusion. The truth doesn't panic under pressure, it stands taller. You are living proof that no amount of investigation can erase integrity that's been built over years of quiet loyalty and consistency. They tried to put your name on trial, and it ended up in headlines of admiration. They wanted to ruin your reputation. Instead, they made it undeniable. They wanted to feed on your downfall. Instead, they choked on your elevation. That's the power of clean living. It turns gossip into gospel, lies into lessons, and enemies into unpaid marketers of your greatness. So let them keep talking, because every time they speak your name, they make it shine brighter. You don't need revenge. You are the revenge. Their disappointment is your justice. Their obsession is your trophy. You don't have to lift a finger. The universe already did the cleanup. And that's the part that burns them most. You didn't just pass their test. You were never even taking it. Number 2. The streets testified while their lies fell flat. When the truth walks the same streets as lies, only one leaves footprints that last. They thought the streets would turn against you. They were convinced their whispers would become your headlines. But when the air cleared and the truth started walking, it had a louder voice than all their secrets combined. Because here's the reality: when you've lived right, when you've treated people well, when you've moved with quiet grace instead of hidden chaos, your reputation builds its own defense system. You don't have to beg anyone to speak up for you. The streets do it naturally, and that's exactly what burned them the most. Imagine this: they were sitting in a circle, confident that their rumor had spread. They pictured people rolling their eyes at your name, repeating the lies they planted. But when a real investigator came knocking, someone neutral, someone looking for facts, not feelings, the truth hit them like a cold slap, because every person he spoke to said the same thing. No, they're solid, never caused drama, always handled things the right way. Every sentence was a nail in the coffin of their scheme. Their lies died before they even got to court. Reputation is built in whispers, but proven in echoes. You didn't need to clear your name. Your character already did it. The universe doesn't let false energy dominate for long. It flips it right back. The streets they thought would drag your name through mud ended up cleaning it like polished glass. They underestimated how many people had quietly seen your goodness, your patience, your consistency. Because real people don't always talk, but when truth is on trial, they testify. Let's be real. Your enemies counted on the crowd. They assumed numbers could overpower truth. They assumed the echo of gossip would drown out reality. But the world has changed. Chosen one. People are tired of lies. They can feel when something doesn't match the energy they've seen with their own eyes. They've watched you show up, stay calm, do the work, and carry your dignity like armor. So when lies tried to take your place, your presence stood taller. You don't need to defend your name when your work speaks every day. That's the power of walking right when nobody's watching. Those who tried to soil your reputation forgot that you've built quiet allies without even knowing it. People who respect how you move, who remember the way you handled situations they couldn't, who admired your self-control when others would have snapped. That's what saved you. You didn't campaign for validation. Your integrity did the campaigning on its own. Imagine this again. One of your enemies is waiting on updates. They're refreshing their phone, expecting to hear that the investigator found something juicy. But instead, every person interviewed gives you glowing reviews. Imagine their faces when they hear, "Actually, they're one of the calmest people I've ever met. Always professional, always real." You could almost see their confidence deflate like a balloon that's been punctured, because their fantasy needed believers, but all they got were witnesses for your truth. They can't stand it. They can't handle the idea that the same streets they polluted with gossip now praise your name. That's justice in its purest form, when the noise of deception gets drowned out by the clarity of truth. You can't manipulate a narrative that's already sealed by real experience. People didn't just remember your face, they remembered your energy. The way you stayed kind under pressure, the way you kept your composure when others lost theirs. That's what built your defense long before anyone tried to attack you. And here's the part they'll never admit. Deep down, they knew this would happen. They knew that if anyone actually checked, your record would come back spotless. But envy doesn't care about truth. It feeds on fantasy. They needed a story that made them feel powerful again. They needed to believe that tearing you down would make them relevant. But gossip is a weak weapon. It wounds the wielder faster than the target. The same mouths that curse you will one day choke on your name when truth returns for its crown. And it returned, chosen one. The people they tried to recruit didn't fold. The ones who knew you from work, from your neighborhood, from years of shared spaces, they spoke facts. They didn't have to exaggerate, they just told the truth, and that truth hit harder than any defense you could have built. Maybe you're wondering, why does it still hurt though? Why do I still feel betrayed? Because even though the truth won, the betrayal still cuts deep. But understand this, the universe doesn't let false accusations end quietly. It makes them backfire spectacularly. That's why you're seeing people suddenly acting distant, avoiding eye contact, changing their tone. They're embarrassed because the same story they once believed in has collapsed. And the person they doubted, still standing, still calm, still respected. Imagine walking through the same streets they once used to whisper about you, and now those whispers turn into nods of respect. People you never thought noticed you suddenly say, "Hey, I heard good things about you." That's not coincidence. That's reputation echoing through walls that were meant to silence it. Truth doesn't need a megaphone. It travels quietly and lands loudly. And it's landing now, one conversation at a time, proving that your consistency was the real headline all along. This is the beauty of clean living. It doesn't demand attention, but when attention comes, it glows. You've become a living contradiction to their lies. The same streets they thought would destroy you are now your audience. The same mouths that mocked you now mimic your behavior. That's poetic justice in motion. And it's funny, isn't it? They thought they could rewrite your image, but your reality refused to change the script. That's what integrity does. It keeps your truth stable while their lies collapse from exhaustion. Every attempt to frame you only made the contrast sharper. Your calm versus their chaos. Your truth versus their fiction. Your dignity versus their desperation. The louder they lie, the stronger your silence speaks. That's why they're furious now, because no matter what story they tell, it gets overshadowed by proof of who you really are. They can't rewrite what too many people have already witnessed. The streets didn't just fail to confirm their lies, they flipped the narrative completely. Your name now circulates as a lesson in endurance, not a target of gossip. And that, chosen one, is your ultimate victory. You didn't argue. You didn't expose them. You let the truth handle the spotlight, and it performed flawlessly. Every lie now points back to them. Every rumor now exposes the envy that started it. You didn't need revenge. You just needed patience. When you walk with truth, the universe becomes your PR team. That's what happened here. You didn't chase rumors. You replaced them with results. You didn't beg to be understood. You simply kept moving, and the world caught up. Now, the same streets that once doubted you are singing your name, and the people who started it all, they're hiding in the shadows of their own noise. So stand tall, chosen one. Let them stay mad. Let them replay their own embarrassment in silence, because the streets have already spoken, and they spoke the language of truth. Your story isn't just vindicated, it's legendary now. The investigator may have asked questions, but the world answered for you. And what they said was undeniable. You were never the problem. You were the proof. Number 3, even the ones who didn't like you spoke the truth anyway. When even your quiet critics can't find dirt, you've already won the loudest war. They were sure silence would finally turn against you. They thought, let's ask the quiet ones, the ones who barely know them, the ones who might have a hidden grudge. That was the plan. If they couldn't twist your friends, they'd try to flip the bystanders. But what they didn't realize was that even your quiet witnesses had nothing ugly to say. And that's when panic started spreading through their little circle. Because how do you destroy someone whose consistency even strangers can confirm? Imagine that moment. The investigator reaches out to a co-worker who never really talked much, maybe even avoided small talk. Someone they were sure would say, "Yeah, I never liked them." But instead, that same person says, "They were always professional, never disrespectful, just focused on their work." Imagine the silence that followed on the other side of that phone call. The ones who started this mess expected dirt and got documentation of discipline. Your character leaves fingerprints even in rooms you've never entered. You didn't have to campaign for respect. You earned it quietly. Every small act of maturity, every time you kept your peace instead of clapping back, built a reputation that even your distant observers couldn't deny. That's why they're so furious now, because even people who didn't like you won't lie about you. That's a level of integrity you can't fake, and they'll never reach. Maybe you're wondering, but what about the ones who did misunderstand me? Let's be real. Some people never liked your calm because it mirrored their chaos. But dislike isn't the same as dishonor. They might not vibe with you, but deep down, they know you've never crossed the line. That's the difference between having enemies and having haters. Enemies will fight you, haters will envy your peace, but both will eventually have to admit you never gave them a reason. Imagine an ex-friend being questioned, someone who's long gone, who might even have a bit of resentment left. The investigator asks, "What was your experience with them?" And all they can say is, "We don't talk anymore." But they were always respectful. That one sentence carries more weight than 1,000 rumors. Because truth doesn't need to scream, it just sits there, undeniable. You can't twist the words of people who've only ever seen your grace. That's what destroyed them. Their entire smear plan relied on assumption, not evidence. They thought someone, anyone, would finally confirm their story. But all they got was neutrality that leaned in your favor. The kind of quiet honesty that says, "I don't know them well, but I've never seen them act fake." And that single truth cut through every layer of fiction they built. That's what makes your story so powerful. You didn't need everyone to love you. You just needed to live right. And you did. You carried yourself in such a way that even the indifferent couldn't deny your steadiness. That's how powerful authentic energy is. It writes its own testimony. It doesn't need hype, it doesn't need applause. It just stands there like a mirror that reflects everyone's intentions back at them. When even the silent ones speak truth, the liars start to choke on their own echoes. That's where your enemies are now, choking on disappointment. They were counting on whispers and instead got walls of integrity. They thought quiet people would confirm chaos, but they confirmed composure. They thought absence meant guilt, but it meant peace. You weren't pretending to be flawless, you were just being real. You've made mistakes like everyone else, but you never hid behind lies or games. You owned your path, stayed respectful, stayed in your lane. That's what makes your name so hard to stain, because you've been living your truth too consistently for too long. You're not spotless, you're transparent, and that's scarier to them than perfection. Now they're sitting there, frustrated, replaying conversations, realizing they've run out of ammunition. The quiet witnesses they were counting on became living evidence of your character. Even those who don't rock with you had to admit, you're solid. And that's what crushed them. So remember this, chosen one, silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of your truth, standing undefeated. They tried to drag you through mud, but all they did was wash your name clean. When even the quiet ones speak well of you, it's not luck. It's proof that your life leaves an honest trail wherever you go. Number 4, the report didn't break them. The reflection did. You can't hate the truth without hating the part of yourself it exposes. They were so sure this so-called investigation would finally ruin you. They pictured your image cracking under pressure, your reputation collapsing in public. But instead of uncovering your flaws, the light they tried to use against you became a mirror that showed theirs. The report didn't just come back clean, it came back too clean. Every fact, every statement, every confirmation of your integrity hit them harder than any rumor ever could. Because the truth wasn't just protecting you, it was humiliating them. They expected to find skeletons in your closet, but the only bones rattling were their own insecurities. They wanted to expose your mess, but ended up exposing their obsession. That's what stung the most. This wasn't about justice or curiosity, it was about control. They thought, if I can prove they're not perfect, maybe I can stop feeling small next to them. But perfection was never your aim. Peace was. And while they were busy dissecting your life, they forgot to look at the chaos in their own. When truth walks into the room, lies start sweating. That's what happened here. The more people spoke well of you, the more the walls closed in on them. The more they heard how consistent, respectful, and reliable you've been. The more the contrast burned. It's one thing to lose the argument. It's another to lose it to your own reflection. Because that's what you've become for them, a mirror they can't stand to look into. Imagine this. They're sitting there, waiting for bad news. Waiting for the investigator to say, "You were right." They're not who they pretend to be. Instead, the investigator says, "Honestly, everyone I spoke to respects them." There's nothing but good feedback. You can picture the silence, the stiff smile, the fake nod. That's the sound of someone realizing they've been fighting a ghost that only existed in their own imagination. The cleaner your name gets, the dirtier their envy feels. Every time the report praised you, it pierced their ego like a blade, because deep down they knew what people admired in you were the very things they lack. Your discipline, your emotional control, your quiet confidence, all reminders of the potential they abandoned. You didn't expose them with words. Your life did. They weren't mad about losing. They were mad about what they lost, the illusion that they were better. The story they told themselves about you was supposed to make them feel powerful. It was supposed to make sense of their jealousy. But the investigation stripped that away. It didn't just say, "You're innocent." It screamed, "They lied." And that's unbearable for people who depend on lies to feel alive. Maybe you've asked yourself, why are they still angry if the truth already came out? Because the truth didn't just end the rumor, it ended their comfort. Before, they could tell themselves, everyone will see who they really are. Now, they have to face the fact that everyone already sees, and it's you who stands in the light. That kind of exposure is brutal for fragile egos. You didn't embarrass them publicly, but the truth did it privately, and that's worse. Integrity is the loudest revenge. You don't have to shout when your life speaks for itself. That's what's happening now. Every clean word about you is a silent slap to their pride. They're not haunted by your success. They're haunted by the reflection of who they could have been if they'd chosen growth over gossip. You're a mirror they can't escape, and every time they see you win with grace, it taunts them with what they lack. The truth is, this was never about your actions. It was about their discomfort with your peace. You handled situations they would have blown up. You stayed respectful in moments they would have exploded. You showed maturity where they showed malice. So when the report confirmed what everyone already knew, that you were real, consistent, and grounded, it didn't just clear you, it condemned them. Imagine them sitting in front of that metaphorical mirror now. Every reflection is a reminder. They tried to expose a liar, but found an example. They tried to humiliate you, but humiliated themselves instead. Because when you're rooted in truth, every attack becomes self-inflicted for the attacker. The light they called down to burn you just illuminated their own shadows. You can't bury someone who was planted on truth. Digging only exposes your own dirt. That's what the universe just showed them. They wanted to investigate you. The universe investigated them. And the result? You walked away untouchable, while they walked away uncovered. Their rage isn't about the report. It's about what it revealed inside themselves. So let them stay angry, chosen one. Their fury isn't your burden. It's their reflection screaming back at them. You didn't ruin their peace. They ruined it by comparing their emptiness to your authenticity. The truth didn't break you. It broke their illusion. And from now on, every time they hear your name, it'll echo like a mirror shattering in their own mind, because they finally see what they really are. Number 5. They tried to write your story, but the truth rewrote theirs. When lies lose their rhythm, truth starts playing louder, and no one dances to fiction anymore. They thought they were the storytellers. They thought they could control the script of your life, twist the plot, and decide how others saw you. That was their weapon. Not fists, not facts, but narrative control. They whispered in corners, spread half-truths in private messages, and turned your peace into something suspicious. They misread your silence as guilt, your distance as arrogance, and your calm as manipulation. They wanted the world to see you through their bitterness. But here's what they forgot. Narratives only work until someone checks the source. Manipulation collapses the moment evidence walks in. That's exactly what happened. When the investigator started asking around, reality became the wrecking ball. Suddenly, every co-worker, friend, and casual acquaintance told the same truth. You weren't who they said you were. You weren't fake. You weren't messy. You weren't hiding anything. You were simply you. And that's when their castle of gossip started crumbling like wet paper. Because no amount of lies can survive a united testimony of truth. Imagine their faces when they realized their audience had flipped. The people they once fooled began connecting dots. How your actions never matched the rumors. How your quiet confidence contradicted every insult. Wait, maybe they were never the problem? That's the moment control slipped out of their hands. Because once truth starts to trend, lies go out of fashion fast. They didn't just lose power, they lost their platform. They went from being the narrators of your downfall to being the subjects of their own exposure. People started asking the questions they feared most. Why were they so obsessed with someone who's never mentioned them? Why go so hard to destroy someone who just minds their business? Those questions are poison to manipulators, because once people start thinking for themselves, the illusion dies. The loudest lie still bows to the quiet proof of consistency. Your actions became your defense. You didn't argue, you didn't react. You just kept showing up, doing right, and letting time do the talking. And that's what killed their script, time. The longer people watched, the more the truth became undeniable. Your peace outlasted their performance. Your calm dismantled their chaos. They built their story like a house of mirrors, twisted reflections designed to make you look distorted. But mirrors only work in darkness. The moment light enters, the illusion breaks. And that's what you did. You brought light just by staying real. You didn't have to prove anything. You lived your proof. Every person who spoke about you from first-hand experience became another crack in their false reality. Now they're scrambling, trying to patch the narrative with excuses, but it's too late. People have seen the truth, and once the curtain falls, no one can unsee the act. Their audience left, their credibility vanished, and their version of you no longer exists anywhere but in their own frustration. They didn't just lose control of your name, they lost ownership of their own mask. When the truth finally speaks, the liars start whispering. That's the stage they're in now. panic mode. They can't delete what's already been revealed. They can't reframe what's already confirmed. The same voices they used to spread rumors are now echoing your praise. That's karma in real time. They thought they were writing your ending, chosen one, but all they did was draft your resurrection story. The universe flipped their script, edited out their lies, and published the truth in bold print. They didn't just lose control, they lost their narrative, and now the world is finally reading the real version of you. Number 6. You lived so real, even strangers became your alibi. When your truth is consistent, even people who barely know you start defending your name. You didn't need to explain who you were. You didn't have to post deep captions or beg for validation. You just lived right, day after day, quietly, consistently. You didn't fake peace for attention. You were peace. You didn't smile for cameras. You smiled because your spirit stayed unbothered. That's what separated you from the noise. While others were busy performing goodness, you were being it. And when the investigator came looking for cracks in your story, all they found was proof that your character was solid from every angle. Imagine this, people who barely knew your name still saying, yeah, they're good people. Always calm, always respectful, no rehearsed loyalty, no forced support, just natural consistency. That's what terrified your enemies. Because they built their hope on the assumption that your image would collapse under pressure. They expected mixed opinions, jealousy, contradictions. Instead, they got harmony, person after person repeating the same message. They're genuine. That's not coincidence, that's alignment. Energy doesn't lie, it leaves fingerprints wherever you go. You didn't need to charm anyone or manipulate perceptions. You were simply yourself, and that energy was enough. It's wild how honesty travels. It spreads without words. People remember the way you carried yourself, the way you didn't engage in gossip, the way you treated everyone the same. That's why even strangers vouched for you. They didn't have to know your story to feel your sincerity. And let's be real, your enemies hate that kind of quiet power. They can fake smiles, fake confidence, fake friendships, but they can't fake authenticity. They can't replicate that stillness that says, I'm good with or without your approval. You were never chasing clicks or trying to be seen. You were simply showing up as you. That's what built your credibility. And when truth has witnesses that owe you nothing, lies can't compete. You can't assassinate a character that's been verified by reality itself. The investigator didn't just find a good reputation, he found consistency across every level of your life. From co-workers to casual acquaintances, from people you helped to those who barely crossed your path, it all matched. No contradictions, no chaos. Just a steady, grounded frequency that spoke louder than any defense you could have made. That's when your enemies started to panic, because they realized your reputation wasn't built on popularity. It was built on proof, and proof doesn't break. They tried to twist your silence into mystery, but silence was your strength. You didn't leave loose ends for anyone to grab onto. Every corner of your life was clean, not perfect, but real. When you live in truth, your life becomes your testimony. You were never performing purity, you were just living in peace. That's why even people who didn't like you still couldn't lie about you. They might not vibe with your energy, but they respect it. And that's power, not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet kind that can't be questioned. So when the report came back glowing, your enemies weren't shocked by the result. They were crushed by the realization. They finally understood that your name didn't survive because of luck. It survived because it was earned. You've been living so authentically that even strangers can vouch for you. That's the kind of truth no investigation can touch. Number 7, they laughed at your solitude. Now they're choking on its silence. The same silence they mocked became the silence that saved you. They used to smirk when you kept to yourself. They said you were too quiet, too proud, too distant. They mistook your peace for weakness and your privacy for arrogance. They didn't understand that solitude was never your prison. It was your protection. While they were busy trading secrets and performing friendship for attention, you were building something solid, a life free from unnecessary noise. You didn't isolate yourself because you were afraid of people. You just refused to mix with anything that didn't match your energy. And now, when the spotlight has turned harsh, that solitude they mocked has become your greatest weapon. They had circles of gossip, you had circles of peace. While they were laughing together in group chats filled with shade, you were minding your business, planting seeds of integrity. While they were bonding over other people's mistakes, you were learning from your own in silence. They thought their alliances made them strong, but alliances built on lies are made of paper. One question from the investigator, and the whole thing burned down. Your solitude, though, it stood like stone. Imagine this: the investigator starts asking around, digging for your name in their mess. Suddenly they realize your hands are clean. You were never in those rooms, never part of those whisper networks, never tied to the fake drama they created. Your distance became your shield. The walls they called cold were actually gates of wisdom. Every step you took away from their noise now echoes like a smart move that saved your reputation. They mistook your silence for emptiness, but silence is where the wise prepare. You weren't lonely, you were strategic. You saw what others couldn't. That fake company costs more than honest solitude. You stayed out of the spotlight because you understood how fast light can expose not just others, but the ones standing too close. That foresight kept you untouchable when the rumors started flying. They don't laugh now, they can't, because the same distance they ridiculed now makes them look reckless. They were loud, visible, and messy. You were calm, quiet, and calculated. And when the questions started, who said this? Who was involved? Your name never came up, not once. That's not luck, that's discipline. Maybe you've wondered, was it worth it, staying away from everyone? Look around. You're standing tall while their alliances collapse under the weight of their own deceit. The very solitude they mocked has proven to be divine strategy, protection disguised as distance. They called you antisocial, now they call you smart. They used to whisper that you thought you were better, now they whisper that you were right. Peace doesn't need a crowd, it needs clarity, and you had it all along. While they mistook noise for power, you mastered silence, and now the universe has turned that silence into armor so strong, even the sharpest lies bounce off. They laughed once, but now every echo of that laughter reminds them. They should have never underestimated the one who knew how to walk alone. Number 8. The good gossip became your shield in the war they started. When your truth walks ahead of you, lies can only follow and trip over their own feet. You didn't even realize it, chosen one. You were building your own protection long before the battle began. Every small act of integrity, every quiet moment where you chose peace over pettiness, was stacking invisible armor around you. While your enemies were plotting their next smear, the universe was already gathering witnesses on your behalf. People were speaking well of you in rooms you didn't even know existed. That wasn't luck. That was legacy. Because when you live honestly, your name becomes your defense. Imagine this. While they were rehearsing lies, someone else was casually telling the truth about you. A co-worker said, "They've always been respectful." A neighbor mentioned, "They keep to themselves, never in drama." A friend said, "They're solid, always calm, even under pressure." One after another, those simple truths became your bulletproof vest. By the time your enemies took aim, the gossip they started bounced right off. Because the universe had already armed you with reputation built from real behavior. Good gossip is the reward of clean living. It spreads quietly but defends loudly. That's what happened here. The lies never stood a chance because your track record was too consistent to contradict. Even people who barely knew you had the same story. Stable, respectful, real. And that's what drove your enemies crazy. They expected chaos, but they found calm. They wanted evidence of weakness, but they ran into proof of strength. They tried to assassinate your character, not realizing your character was already protected by witnesses who owed you nothing but spoke the truth anyway. This wasn't just social defense, it was spiritual warfare. They weren't attacking your image, they were attacking your identity. They wanted to strip you of credibility, peace, and self-trust. But they didn't understand. Authenticity is armor. Every time you refused to argue, every time you let silence do the talking, every time you showed grace when anger was easier, you were reinforcing that armor. You didn't just survive the war, you neutralized it before it began. You were never unprotected, you were just underestimated. They mistook your calm for vulnerability, but calmness is the language of the powerful. You didn't need to fight dirty because your integrity fought for you. When the judgment came, the verdict was already written, untouchable. Your name, your actions, your consistency, those were your spiritual weapons. And in the end, their lies didn't just miss the target. They ricocheted and exposed who the real enemy was. They wanted to destroy your name, chosen one. Instead, they made it echo with honor. Number 14. You became the plot twist that rewrote their whole story. They wanted to narrate your downfall, but your truth hijacked the script. They thought they had your life figured out. In their story, you were the villain, the one who was too quiet, too confident, too mysterious. They painted your peace as arrogance, your confidence as manipulation, your difference as danger. They thought that if they repeated the same lie enough times, it would become fact. But the universe doesn't reward repetition, it rewards truth. And when the truth finally entered the room, it flipped the entire narrative upside down. They thought they were writing your ending, but what they didn't realize is that they were only setting the stage for your reveal. Every whisper, every rumor, every shade-filled conversation was unknowingly building suspense for your comeback. When the investigator came looking for dirt, he didn't find darkness, he found discipline. He didn't find secrets, he found structure, and that's when the story cracked wide open. The people who were supposed to back up their lies couldn't. The facts didn't match the fiction. You didn't just survive the smear campaign, you exposed it. They built a rumor, the truth built a revolution. The twist wasn't loud, it was poetic. The same people who once nodded along to the lies began questioning everything. Wait, if they were so bad, why does everyone describe them the same way? Calm, kind, focused. That's when panic hit your enemies. Their words had lost gravity. Their storylines collapsed under the weight of proof. And suddenly, you weren't the villain. You were the balance, the steady one, the calm in the middle of chaos. Imagine the silence in their circle when the report came out clean. All the tension they'd built, all the anticipation for your supposed exposure, gone. Because the truth didn't just come out, it showed out. And here's what shook them to their core. The investigator wasn't just doing a job. That was timing. Divine timing disguised as coincidence. The universe stepped in right when their lie was about to take root and said, "Enough." You didn't beg for justice. You didn't chase closure. You stood still, and truth did the chasing for you. They tried to reduce you to a rumor, but truth promoted you to revelation. That's what happens when your character is stronger than their story. You became the plot twist no one saw coming. the one who proved that silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. You didn't fight back with noise, you fought back with evidence. You didn't defend yourself with words, your life did it for you. Every moment you stayed calm, every time you refused to retaliate was another sentence written in your favor. They wanted to destroy your name, but they ended up destroying their credibility. They wanted the crowd to turn against you, but the crowd turned on them. They wanted to write your ending, but instead they edited themselves out of the book entirely. And now the world is reading your story the way it was always meant to be told. Not as a tragedy, but as a testimony. The truth didn't just clear you, it crowned you. You didn't just survive the investigation, you rose through it. They thought they were creating your downfall, but what they really did was hand you your spotlight. Because when the light hit, only one story stood tall, the real one, and it had your name all over it. And now, chosen one, you see it clearly. Every rumor, every setup, every whisper was never your ending. It was your awakening. They tried to investigate your life, but the only thing they exposed was their own envy. You didn't just survive, you rose above every lie with proof, peace, and power. The truth spoke for you, louder than any defense ever could. Your story isn't over, it's just getting louder. So if this message hit home, make sure to like, subscribe, share this video, and drop 77 in the comments to claim your victory and keep this truth alive.